Today we're looking at Diamine Sherwood Green. Hi, I'm Adam and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Diamine Sherwood Green is a green ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Retro 51 Tornado with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a very nice blue across the bottom. Now that blue immediately forms a line. It seeps immediately into the filter paper, showing a little bit of resistance there. It pushes up. We get a very nice green with a very dark, rich green at the top. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And the noticeable difference that occurs is that blue line across the bottom. In 10 minutes, it's really affixing itself into this filter paper, which makes me say that the blue could be a really holdout color in resistance tests. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I'm very happy with how this performed. It is really easy to read. I feel safe using this as a note taker. Now, water, we see it's really reactivating and lifting most all of the colors. The interesting thing is that blue that I was seeing in the chromatography is still very much there. It's very light. It's a lot lighter than I was expecting it to be, but it's there and it's not coming up. Pen Flush did exactly the same thing that water did, just a little bit more. Now, really specifically, at the top left side of this Pen Flush, we start to see the beginnings of the white of the paper coming through. So this was only 30 seconds and it doesn't look like it's working, but if we find those two little spots right there, we see some of the white of the paper, which makes me say, given just a little bit of time with that Pen Flush, more than 30 seconds, Pen Flush should be able to take this out of your pen. 1/3 bleach solution does completely remove it from the paper, leaving a little bit of yellow staining behind, but I don't think that you're going to need that pen or the 1/3 bleach to get it out of your pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine Sherwood Green has a viscosity of 2, making it a wetter ink, just a little wetter than normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Diamine Sherwood Green has an average dry time of 8 seconds, making this a ridiculously fast drying ink, and this isn't marketed as their fast dry. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and as you can tell, there's like none of it left. I had less than half a milliliter left in order to write my notes about this. I enjoyed using this ink so much that right after I was doing all of this with the writing samples, I had to kind of make sure I left some, because this ink performs very nicely. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. Let's try and zoom in a little bit here. Whoa, there we go. See how that works out for us. We get no bleeding. No ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and it has beautiful shading. Beautiful shading. It's not that camouflage shading, but it is very nice. Diamine is a very dark word with some lighter mid-tone areas like the M and the I-N. The min in the middle, nice mid-tone. In Sherwood, we get a light to dark to mid-tones on the O's, and then very dark on the D. Very nice shading going on in the 1.1. The extra fine is a significantly lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread,
halo sheen, and beautiful shading. The starts light, gets dark, stays dark. Quick starts light and gets dark. Brown starts dark and gets light. Fox is dark to light to dark. Beautiful. And 4 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and again, beautiful shading. Quick starts dark, gets light, and gets dark again. Brown starts as a mid-tone, gets dark at the top, goes back to a mid-tone, and becomes very dark at the end. Fox starts light and gets dark, very dark at the X. Very nice. 7 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows plenty of color variation, and we got plenty of color variation. And it wouldn't smudge. I mean, yes, there's some smudge, but look at that. You could 100%, without a doubt, recover this if you smear while you were writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding. Of course we have ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade. But Tomoe River doesn't tend to let inks keep their shading. The extra fine is a slightly lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and again, no shading gets to come through here. It took 9 seconds to dry. Beautiful tone. Beautiful tone of green with this. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine. The medium has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 14 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both show us a little bit of color variation, but we didn't get any in the writing sample. And the smear test, adjust this light. The smear test, you could maybe, that's a maybe, recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Rhodia. Rhodia has no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and it has some beautiful shading spots, especially in the word green. It starts very dark, it gets light as I come up, gets dark as I come back down into the G, light into the R. First E is much darker than the second E. It's beautiful. The extra fine is slightly lighter in tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It's got some beautiful shading spots going on. Again, like the X and Fox, much darker. In jumps, it gets very dark at the PS. The K in quick is very dark. The A in the beginning of Z in lazy, very dark, but the rest is all a great mid-tone. And 4 seconds to dry. Now, medium is a slightly darker tone than the extra fine, but not quite as dark as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It does offer some very nice shading. Like quick, starts dark and becomes very dark, or sorry, starts light and becomes very dark at the K. Fox starts light and becomes dark. Jumps starts light and becomes dark. The dot on the J is very dark. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows plenty of color variation, and we got plenty of color variation. In the smear test, you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. North Books. We get no bleeding. Of course, you know, we get a couple little spots that happen there when I'm doing the, what's it called? The scrubby. But I'm putting it on stupid thick there, and it's not really the fault of the paper. That's me putting it on like an animal. But other than that, no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shading. Good Lord. The extra fine is the same tone as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade, 1 second to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any in the smear test. Look, without a doubt, it barely, it dries super fast here. But there's no doubt that you could recover this if you smeared while you're writing. And it performed so well on this paper. It's the Inky Fingers notebook. No bleeding. No real ghosting. I mean, there's minor ghosting coming through, but it's a thinner paper, and I think it's performing very well. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and we get some spots of shade. More of a lighter to mid-tone. Like the woo in wood is a lighter tone, but then it's a mid-tone on the The H is darker and the D is darker. So we get great right here. It goes dark to mid to dark. Beautiful. I had quote marks on this one, but they are very dark. Very nice. In Diamine, the E is very dark compared to the rest of the word. Beautiful. The extra fine is a much lighter tone. It's like 4 shades lighter than the 1.1. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo sheen, some spots of shading. Spots. The P in jumps is a bit darker, the K in quick is a bit darker, the X in fox, the looks darker than over. So there's some shading spots. It's not really standout, but it is there and it is nice. 3 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and again some spots of shading like the X in fox, K in quick. The is a much darker word than the word brown directly above it. Very nice. Lazy starts dark and works its way light. 7 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows us a lot of color variation, and we got it. Looking at the medium, we see a lot of color variation, but to see it, you got to look far left to far right to make it more obvious. If you look at the whole thing, you don't see it as much. In a smear test, you could certainly recover this without a problem if you smeared while you were writing. Last up, Fabriano Echo Qua. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and I'm not seeing any shading come through here. The extra fine is a lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It has a few spots of shading. The K in quick, the looks darker than the word over. The F in fox is very dark. Fox gets to a mid-tone and then very dark at the X, but that's about it. Not a whole lot of other shading going on. And 3 seconds to dry. Now the medium is the same tone as the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and the same kind of shading happening here. Like in fox, starts dark and the X is very dark. In quick, the K is a much darker word, or much darker letter than the rest of the word. Jumps, starts light, and gets dark. It's nice shading here. It is not as nice as it's looked on some other papers. 5 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium both show us some color variation, and we do get some color variation. And again, the smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. And that is all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Diamine Sherwood Green, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. And sometimes complementing a color means not drawing attention away from it and letting it really shine, but having something else there. And I wanted a nice gray. I chose Private Reserve's Grey Flannel so that it wouldn't draw the attention away from this beautiful green. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Diamine's Sherwood Green? It's a green that performs the way I would like a green to perform. It gives great shading in every nib that I've used. It gives slightly different tones of green depending on the nib width and flow of the pen. It is absolutely gorgeous, and I am thankful that I went ahead and gave this ink a shot because it is very nice. Thanks for watching.